Archie Bunker's world has always been built on habits: the same bar stool at Kelsey's, the same dinner at home with Edith, the same complaints about a world that he feels is slipping away from him. But as this episode begins, there's a subtle tremor in that routine. In a moment of harmless flirting, a waitress named Denise begins to show him the kind of attention his wife no longer does. Archie jokes, he laughs, he even tells that tired old Martian story that never quite lands. The joke isn't funny, but the way he tells it, the half smile, the pride in his own delivery, reveals the loneliness of a man who has begun to measure his worth by how much others still find him amusing. At home, Edith is absorbed in her volunteer work at the Sunshine Home, caring for old people, comforting them, finding a sense of purpose that doesn't always include her husband. Archie feels neglected. The beer is warm, the house is too quiet, and his wife is too busy. When he finally tries to spark some romance, Tawny Port jokes and awkward charm she leaves to deliver a set of dentures to a 90-year-old friend. His frustration turns to emptiness, and that emptiness turns him toward Denise. What begins as a casual invitation to share a drink becomes the emotional pivot of the story. Archie brings wine, tells exaggerated stories of his youth in Italy, and tries to impress her with his half-remembered phrases in broken Italian. There's a tension in his voice, a mix of guilt and excitement, as if he's both chasing and fleeing something at the same time. The moment teeters between temptation and restraint. When a young delivery boy arrives and teasingly hints at the obvious, Archie suddenly sees himself through the boy's mocking eyes and realizes what he's about to destroy. He leaves in a rush, but his moral retreat doesn't erase the emotional trespass. Back home, Edith waits for him with that familiar mixture of confusion and faith. She knows something is wrong even before she finds the slip of paper with the waitress's phone number. Archie stammers, inventing stories about bowling, poker, and even helping an old woman carry groceries. Each lie contradicts the last until he is cornered by her quiet persistence. When he finally confesses, he insists that nothing happened. It was just a drink, a kiss, a little talk. But for Edith, that's enough to break something deep and silent between them. The woman who has spent decades forgiving his temper, his prejudice, and his bluster suddenly realizes that her loyalty has been taken for granted. She leaves home. The house feels different without her. Archie tries to fill the void with jokes, bravado, and denial. At Kelsey's, he insists that he's fine, that freedom is all he ever wanted. But his words betray him. He talks about missing her voice calling. Is that you, Archie? The very thing he used to complain about? Even his drinking buddies, usually happy to indulge his jokes, see through the facade. He's not free, he's lost. When Gloria and Mike invite him to dinner, he refuses, yet shows up anyway, ostensibly to see his grandson Joey. He brings a toy, a clumsy peace offering, but his pride won't allow him to admit he came for Edith. The confrontation that follows is classic Bunker, a shouting match filtered through their daughter as if neither can bear to speak directly. Every grievance, every wound of 27 years of marriage spills out through miscommunication and humor. But beneath the laughter is the deep ache of two people who have forgotten how to talk to each other except through anger. Edith's time away at the Sunshine Home gives her perspective. Surrounded by the elderly, she rediscovers her independence. There's something else I can count on, she tells Gloria me. For the first time, Edith realizes she has a life beyond Archie. When Gloria pleads with her to come home, Edith refuses. It's not pride, it's self-respect. She needs Archie to understand what it means to value someone before losing them. Meanwhile, Archie crumbles in small ways: sleepless nights, awkward jokes, and the creeping realization that the house he once ruled feels like a prison without her voice in it. The eventual reunion is quiet, hesitant, and deeply human. They meet on the porch, surrounded by the peeling paint and the faint smell of Edith's cooking that lingers in the air. Their dialogue is clumsy at first, small talk about colors for the porch, the kind of mundane chatter that fills the silence when words of love feel too raw. When she finally asks if the waitress was pretty, Archie sighs, tired of confessing, tired of lying. He insists again that it meant nothing, but Edith, in her gentle way, reminds him that it meant something to her. That's the power of her simplicity. She doesn't need anger to make her point. The silence that follows says everything neither can. Then, in one of the most tender moments in the series, Archie reaches for her hand and half-jokingly proposes again. Do you, Edith Baines, take Archie Bunker to be your lawfully wedded husband until you can't take him no more? She repeats the vow, smiling through tears. The humor returns, but now it's a bridge, not a weapon. He asks, "Are you sure you're gonna love me just as much?" She answers, "Not as much as I thought." It's the kind of line that cuts deeper than any argument, a mix of affection, exhaustion, and honesty that comes only after years of living with someone's flaws. They don't solve everything, but they rediscover each other through the shared acknowledgement of imperfection. But life isn't done testing Archie. No sooner does his marriage stabilize than another blow strikes, he loses his job. After 30 years of labor, the factory closes its contract and the men are laid off. The scene where he sits at the unemployment office captures the humiliation of a working-class man confronting a bureaucratic world that sees him as a number, not a person. The clerk, young and detached, tries to follow the system's procedures, while Archie rails against it with his trademark mixture of ignorance and raw truth. His rant about the system that can make a job for you, but not for me, isn't just comic, it's prophetic. The America that once promised dignity to men like Archie is changing, and he knows it. For all his faults, he embodies a generation struggling to understand why hard work no longer guarantees respect. When he returns home defeated, Edith comforts him not with pity, but with quiet strength. Her empathy isn't naive anymore, it's earned. She knows the limits of what she can fix, yet she stands beside him because she chooses to, not because she must. In one of their most intimate exchanges, she tells him that needing love doesn't make him weak, it makes him human. For once Archie listens, his bluster softens into vulnerability. He reaches for her almost childlike, whispering, "Whatever happens, I love you." She answers the same, and they hold each other as if trying to stop time from eroding what's left of their certainty. That night, the familiar theme song, "Those Were the Days," plays again, but now it carries a different tone. It's no longer nostalgia for a past world. It's a lament for the illusions that once made that world feel safe. Archie's jokes about Martians and bowling alleys, his fear of changing times, his resentment of progress, all dissolve into something universal: the fear of becoming irrelevant, unloved, unseen. Yet through Edith's grace, he's given a second chance to grow, to see love not as possession, but as endurance. By the final moments, the laughter of the audience blends with a quiet sadness. The bunkers sit together, surrounded by the clutter of their small queen's home, a world both suffocating and sacred. The man who once declared that he didn't need anyone now realizes that the only thing holding his life together is the woman he almost lost. Edith, who once defined herself through service to others, now understands her own worth. They don't need to say, "I forgive you." It's already there in the way she looks at him, in the way he doesn't look away. The marriage that began as a sitcom stereotype ends as something far more complex, a portrait of endurance, imperfection, and quiet redemption. In the end, all in the family shows that love is not about never straying, never doubting, or never failing. It's about returning again and again to the fragile bond that keeps two flawed people from collapsing under the weight of life's disappointments. Archie and Edith don't live in a perfect world, but in their small, stubborn way, they remind us that even amid betrayal, fear, and change, there's room for forgiveness and maybe for grace. Archie Bunker's life was built like the bricks of his Queen's row house, solid, ordinary, and fixed in place. Every day followed a pattern: the same morning coffee, the same sarcastic greetings, the same complaints about a world that never stopped changing. His comfort came not from love or laughter, but from predictability. Yet beneath that rough and loud surface was a man terrified of becoming invisible. When the episode begins, Archie is caught between two worlds, the one he understands and the one that no longer has room for him. At the cafe, Denise, a young waitress with warm eyes and a voice like sunshine on glass, laughs at his jokes. Her laughter is light, but to Archie, it feels like oxygen. It reminds him of who he used to be before life became routine, before every conversation turned into a complaint, before Edith's gentle patience started to feel like silence. In that coffee shop, Archie becomes a man again. Not a husband, not a worker, not a relic, but someone worth noticing. Denise calls him sweetie cutie, words he hasn't heard since he was young. It's harmless, at first a game played between two people who both know where the lines are. But every joke, every shared laugh pulls him closer to the edge of something he doesn't want to name. At home, Edith hums to herself as she folds the laundry, moving through the house like a ghost of tenderness. She's kind, always kind, but her kindness has become routine too. Her energy now belongs to others, the neighbors, the church, the sunshine home for the elderly. Archie, left alone, begins to resent the goodness that once made him love her. He confuses neglect with independence, as many men of his generation did. That evening he comes home hoping for something special. A quiet dinner, a little warmth, the kind of affection that doesn't need words. He brings a bottle of port wine and an old-fashioned charm that doesn't fit him anymore. But Edith is already dressed to leave, holding an old man's dentures in her hands. She's on her way to deliver them to the Sunshine Home. It'll make Mr. Klieger so happy, she says. The words sting him. Happiness, that's what he's been trying to feel all week. When she leaves, the silence in the house is unbearable. Archie opens the fridge, closes it again, sits, stands, wanders a man pacing inside his own loneliness. Then he reaches for his hat and the bottle of port, the same bottle meant for Edith. At Denise's apartment, everything feels unfamiliar and exciting. There are soft lights, music from a small radio, the faint smell of perfume in the air. She tells him to make himself comfortable, and he jokes nervous about how the chair fits like a glove if my butt was a hand. Denise laughs sincerely, not mockingly, and that small laugh disarms him. They talk, they drink, they remember youth. She asks about the war. He exaggerates stories from Italy, mixing pride with longing. He speaks about a girl he once knew, maybe real, maybe imagined. And in the middle of his story, he realizes how much he misses being the kind of man who has stories to tell. Then the doorbell rings. The beer delivery boy steps in, a kid barely 20, all grin and cynicism. He looks at Archie and Denise with a knowing smirk. "Have yourself a ball," he says in a voice dripping with irony. The words hit Archie like a slap. In an instant, the fantasy collapses. He sees himself as the boy sees him, an aging fool chasing the echo of his own past. He leaves abruptly, muttering excuses, carrying his shame like an invisible coat. Back home, Edith greets him with warmth that cuts deeper than anger. "You're home early," she says, smiling, unaware of the storm behind his eyes. He tries to respond normally, but guilt has its own weight. When she finds the slip of paper, a woman's number in his pocket, the air turns cold. Archie stumbles through lies, stacking them one atop another, bowling poker, a favor for a friend. The lies sound ridiculous even to him. Edith listens without interrupting her silence, more devastating than rage. Finally, he breaks. "Nothing happened," he insists. "I swear it didn't mean nothing." But Edith knows that betrayal begins long before the act. She doesn't yell, she doesn't cry, she just looks at him, truly looks at him, and something in her gaze tells him that forgiveness won't come easily this time. That night, she packs a small bag and leaves for the Sunshine Home. Days blur into one another. Archie pretends to be fine. He drinks at Kelsey's, jokes with friends, argues about politics, but every laugh rings hollow. He's free, yes, but free from what? From the only person who ever loved him without conditions. He feels the absence of her voice, her cooking, her fussing. The house feels enormous now, as if the walls themselves are holding their breath. At the Sunshine Home, Edith finds a strange peace. Surrounded by people older and lonelier than herself, she feels useful again. Her hands are never idle, folding blankets, adjusting pillows, mending buttons. She sings quietly as she works. The other residents adore her. For the first time, she belongs somewhere not defined by Archie's shadow. When Gloria visits and pleads for her to come home, Edith shakes her head gently. "He was thinking about doing what he said he didn't," she says. And that's enough. Gloria doesn't understand. But Edith isn't angry. She's simply tired. After years of being the heart of the home, she's learning how to have a heart of her own. Eventually, Archie comes to her. It's not a grand gesture, just an awkward visit full of pauses and unfinished sentences. They stand on the porch of their old house, the one they built their lives in, surrounded by memories, both beautiful and bruising. He talks about the porch paint, about the weather, about nothing important because he doesn't know how to say the words that matter. She listens, waiting for him to find them. Finally, she asks the question that's been haunting her: was she pretty? He hesitates. Then he says what he always says: it didn't mean nothing. But this time, the words sound empty, stripped of their defense. Edith looks at him for a long moment, then sighs. "It meant something to me." And then, as if time rewound itself, Archie takes her hand. "Do you, Edith Baines, take Archie Bunker to be your lawfully wedded husband until you can't take him no more?" She smiles softly. "Until I can't take you no more." They laugh not because it's funny, but because laughter is the only way they know how to hold on. They return home and life goes on, scarred but intact. But the story doesn't end in reconciliation. Life has one more lesson waiting. Archie loses his job, 30 years of loyalty gone overnight. Sitting in the unemployment office surrounded by strangers, he realizes how small he has become in a world that no longer needs men like him. He rages against the system, against youth, against change, but mostly against his own helplessness. At home, Edith doesn't lecture him. She listens. When he breaks down, she takes his hand and says quietly, "Everybody needs comfort and love. That don't make you a baby. It makes you more of a man." For once, Archie believes her. That night, as they sit together, the familiar theme song plays. Boy, the way Glenn Miller played. It sounds different now, softer, sadder, like a hymn for a generation fading into memory. Archie leans back, and for the first time in a long time, he doesn't have anything to say. The world has changed. So has he. But Edith is still there, and that somehow is enough.